ultimately when we agree on a deal, I ask every single one of them, are you happy with this deal? Are you thrilled? Like, if you're not happy and thrilled now, don't sign this. Because that should be your happiest moment, right? You're not gonna be happy next year as you see other guys sign over you. So make sure you're happy.
13 seasons of professional football can go by in a flash, and I was grateful for every second of it. This game gave me everything, not without taking a few pieces of me along with it. Playing offensive line, it's been one of the most rewarding and fulfilling experiences of my life. Now, thanks to Audible, I look forward to sharing insights and stories with you of our favorite NFL stars, and of course, the fraternity of athletes that protect them. Offensive linemen are eternally bonded, and I am proud to forever be a part of the blocking brotherhood. I'm Ryan Kalil, and this is Block Forever. Welcome back to the show. I'm Ryan Kalil. Thank you so much again for listening. Before we get to my guests today, a quick reminder to watch Thursday Night Football this week as the Bucs host the Ravens only on Amazon Prime Video. Should be a great game. I'm certainly watching. On today's episode, I got to speak with the anchor of the Titans O-line, Mr. Ben Jones. We talked about a bunch of stuff, including his annual prank of Coach Vrabel and the sneaky things defensive backs do when they find themselves trying to tackle Derrick Henry. But before that, I went to Buffalo for a lengthy conversation with Bills general manager Brandon Beane. Brandon and I go way back to our days in Carolina when he worked under general manager Marty Hurney. He filled me in on a ton of insider roster stuff I was really curious about, including his philosophy on dealing with agents, what type of players are the biggest distractions, and I got to ask him exactly at what point in the draft process he knew Josh Allen was their guy. He's a great man and obviously doing a great job in Buffalo. Hope you enjoy. I'm so excited to talk to you. I'm so proud of you, first of all. You and I sort of came up together in Carolina.
Yep.
But I never actually heard the story of how you got the Bills job. So, and I'm sure you've told this story a bunch, but I'm curious, just as somebody who's known you a long time, if you could walk me through just a quick version of that.
Yeah, it's funny. This is really glamorous. I literally was in a Wendy's drive-thru.
Thanks for choosing Wendy's. What can I get you today?
Double cheeseburger and fries.
That'll be $8.16 at the first window. Thank you.
I'm tired. And I get a text from a reporter up here that I had gotten my number from someone and said, hey, word is the Bills are firing Doug Whaley and you're gonna be one of the candidates for the job. I'm like, what the heck? I didn't respond. I go home, I tell my wife, I tell my, I call my agent and I'm like, hey, do you know anything? He's like, I've heard nothing. But the next evening he calls and says, hey, they just called, they want to bring you up for an interview. And 3 days later, I'm interviewing for this job. I mean, it's crazy how quick that happened.
I can't wait till you win a Super Bowl and I get to go help direct that Wendy's commercial that you're in where you get the job.
Wendy's drive-thru is the first word I ever heard that I might be interviewing for this job. It's crazy.
That's amazing. Marty Hurney, who's somebody that you and I have both come under, and obviously somebody who had a big impact on my career. Tell me about Marty's philosophies and tell me about yours, what you took from him, what, just in general, like what is Brandon Beane's sort of GM philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be here without Marty, as you know, and I'm sure you'd say the same for drafting where we did, in 07. But Marty, if you didn't know he's the GM, as you would attest, he's just like a regular dude. He's got like dip on his, on his shoe where he missed spitting. He's gonna have a stain on his shirt. I mean, that's why we love him. But he's just genuine. He's real, and he'll have that tough conversation. He's not gonna tell you what you think you want to hear. He's gonna shoot you straight. And that's one of the main things I took from him was be real, be genuine, no matter what your role is. Listen, there are times, Ryan, when I'm releasing a player and they're pissed off at me. But I do think down the line I've found that they do respect, even though we may not see eye to eye on it at that point, they respect the way the news was delivered to them, even if it wasn't what they wanted to hear at the time. And, I think we can attest to it a little bit that we've had guys who have left, who have since come back. Those are the types of stories that I say, you know what, at least even though we didn't keep them here at the time, at least they had a good experience here and they wanted to return.
Do you think that as you sort of raise a player, you draft them, there's some success, they do well for you, those personal relationships weigh into how you evaluate them, or are you able to separate it always?
It does. It weighs a lot. I mean, we obviously want players who are talented, who every fan watching the game says, oh, that's a good player. But sometimes you're right. There's guys that you keep around because he's the glue that keeps the group together. He makes these guys work after practice. He'll call them out when they aren't working hard or they aren't taking care of their body. And that's why you were a hell of a player. But I know even when I left, your career was towards the end, but there was no talk anywhere about, hey, is it going to be time to move on from Ryan Kalil? And you stayed 2 more years and then finished out with the Jets.
Still, though, you need a center that can block a bull rush coming down the middle right in your quarterback's face. So what is that balance? Like, where do you decide to draw the line on that?
Listen, you still have to keep your team youthful, but I think it's what you have either on that side of the ball or in that position room. You can't just roll out a defensive line or a group of linebackers or secondary and you got all young guys. You're going to get burned. And that's where I go back to, if I'm going to let Ryan Kalil walk, all right, who are we leaning on now? In my mind, when I left, we would have to know, all right, we've got someone that's going to take the reins from Ryan now before we let him out of here. And you got to think about that before Ryan can't play a lick and can't stop the bull rush and, not Cam Newton or whoever's playing quarterback.
I remember whenever I'd come upstairs in Carolina, I'd wander into some of those rooms and the walls would be peppered with all kinds of graphs and charts and names, and it was like a beautiful mind in there. And I remember thinking oh, this seems like a lot. This seems like too much. Like who's deciphering this, and how does this, what does the decision process come down? So help me distill and walk through how you sort of navigate all that.
So at the end of every season, you definitely get an update of where your roster is, where these guys are. This guy, his knee is failing. We can probably bandage him together for a year, but I wouldn't count on him, after that. And next year's going to be a little iffy if you really want to keep him. You do have those conversations. So I don't need to have conversations with Sean or any coach about 2023. Okay, they need to focus on 2022. But I do have conversations with, my assistant GM, my salary cap. I got a couple cap guys that manage things, and we have long-term conversations of, all right, we're about to cut this roster down to 53. If this is the 53, let's look at who's going to be our upcoming free agents. Let's look at our salary cap, and you start talking about, all right, next year we got these 5 guys that are our priority free agents. We can pay these 2, because they're going to be a little higher, or we can pay 1 and pay 3 of these guys. And you start having those conversations, and then you kind of let the season play out. And then after the season, I sit back down with Sean and say, all right, Sean, give me your 2 cents. Who's bringing leadership? I think we can both agree on where the skill set's at. Is this going to hurt you to lose this guy who's a captain, or do you feel we've got someone to take those reins over? And then ultimately I've got to make a decision on all that, understanding what the financial, situation is, with each guy.
Draft, how important is the draft to you?
It's everything.
So you're not of this school of them picks?
No, I'm not.
No.
I'm not. Everybody's got their own, and there's nothing wrong with that one. But I believe wholeheartedly in the draft. I just think long term, you've got to draft and develop guys. You have to, or it's not sustainable. And we talk about sustained success. I just have not seen how you can have a team that contends, 4, 5, 6 years in a row without having to really tear it down, somewhere in the middle there. So what my goal is to keep, our window open as long as possible and not go for it for these 2 years, we're going to go for it. If we win, great. If we don't, we'll tear it down and then redo it again and see if we can create another window. I want to be able to sit up here year after year after year and say, we've got enough weapons around Josh Allen and Sean to coach this team that we're competing in 23, we're competing in 24, we're competing in 25 and beyond.
Is that easier to say, though, when you guys drafted right and got the right guy as the sheriff to lead the squad? You know, is that conversation harder when you don't have a guy like Josh Allen at quarterback?
Yeah, you go back to when I got here, the conversation with the Pagulas was, all right, for 17 straight years, this team did not make the playoffs. So you have to go back and study that and learn from it. And so that's one of the conversations with the Pagulas was, you know, you have to give Sean and I a long enough rope here to build this. But the first and most important thing we have to do is find a franchise quarterback. Because I go back to even Carolina days when we weren't getting good quarterback play. You know, we had this thing of, in Carolina, we won a year, we went down a year. We won a year, we went down a year. And that used to drive me nuts. Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? What are we doing? And you have to have steady play from your quarterback. Like, we need to be able to go get what quarterback we think fits the Buffalo Bills. And fortunately, Josh came available, and he's really worked out for us.
Can you talk me through, one, your evaluation of him, but also what you had to do in order to get him where you got him?
We went on this, what I call the quarterback tour. Obviously, we saw some of them at the Senior Bowl, some at the Combine, and then ultimately we went and worked out a bunch of them, and we tried to put them through the exact same regiment on the board, take them to dinner, a script on the field, just to be, because these kids played at different schools. Josh is playing at Wyoming, Sam Darnold's playing at USC, Rosen, Mason Rudolph, I mean, all these, Lamar, all these guys, Baker, they're all playing at different places. And so, unlike the NFL, college is harder to scout because guys are playing against different level competition. So we tried to put it as equal as we could. And then, you know, every time we were around Josh, it was just becoming more and more clear that this was the guy that fit us and what we were looking for.
And what specifically was standing out more than the other guys?
Yeah, I would say Josh, you really smart. And you just, everyone you ask, love Josh. Glowing. This guy's a team first guy. He's not an I guy. He plays with a huge chip on his shoulder. Josh went to a junior college because, you know, he's this tall, skinny kid, maybe 180 pounds or something, wasn't getting Division I love. Well, he's playing there. He's doing some pretty good things, still getting no love. He emailed himself all these programs, sending them, you know, highlights and just trying to get someone. Well, one school gave him a Division I offer, and that was Wyoming. So he goes there. I mean, who knows if Craig Bowl doesn't take him to Wyoming, if Josh Allen never makes it to where he's at. That's how fine the line can be. And so, you know, Josh, from his upbringing, was never this golden arm boy, or he didn't grow up doing all these 7-on-7. He played all the sports. He was the best athlete in town, and he grew up on a farm. There was just so much to like about Josh's story, how he was raised, you know, and just competitiveness was one thing we kept hearing, this guy. And then, you know, knowing we were playing in Buffalo, a big guy, obviously I had been around Cam and saw, you know, a guy who was the biggest guy in the huddle. And I always loved seeing our quarterback being so big, looking at the other team's quarterback. And I think that had influence as well. And I'll tell you one story that we flew out to Laramie to take him out to dinner, the next day work him out, get him on the board. Well, he was flying from California to come meet us for this workout because he'd been working out there with Jordan Palmer. Well, his flight gets stuck in Denver. It's delayed, and so he had a friend picking him up. Well, he was communicating the whole time, and so we went ahead and had dinner, but he busted his tail to get there at like 11 o'clock at night, and many kids would have just said, hey, I'll just see you tomorrow. Well, he gets there, and our owners are there, and we sat for, he probably got there at 10:30. We probably sat there till midnight just talking to him. And you felt how important it was to him. And it just showed this guy will do anything. He doesn't want to let us down. And everything, when I was around him, it just, you get, you know, when you get this feeling you're around people, something feels, it just felt right when we were around Josh.
What about free agency? How do you guys balance the price tag of an individual, but also needing that team need, and how you sort of look at legacy guys? And I mean, how does that all process each and every offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I look at free agency kind of twofold. One is let's fill as many holes as we can. All right, you know what, we do need a slot receiver here. We need a backup safety, you know, whatever. Let's fill as many holes as we can. And I'm not talking about by spending an X number of dollars. I'm just talking about guys that we know. But similar to the draft process, we look back at our notes on this player coming out, what we know about him, what clips have been about him, read stories like, has a coach been on, maybe he didn't coach him, but he was on the Broncos staff when he played there. What does he say about his habits? We try and put it together. You know, obviously, like I talked about earlier, he's got to physically on tape look like the player we want for that position. But we also try and make sure he's going to be a culture fit and come in here and lead our young guys the right way, or at least, even if he's not a leader, at least fall in line and do things the way we want them done. And so we try to do that because you know how it is. Every team runs their players themselves. When you draft a guy, you kind of can mold him from the get-go. Sometimes you get guys from certain programs and you're like, man, I don't know if we're going to be able to convert him to the way we do business here in Buffalo. And so those are all conversations. Financially,
how do you determine that? Just from meeting with them, or do you talk to other players?
You can't talk to them through the process.
Right. So how do you do that?
So we'll basically we'll have our scouts go around to coaches, especially new coaches who've come from other places, and we'll give them a list of guys, not just at their position, but tell me if you know anything about any of these guys. And it'll be the guys that we have targeted on free agency. And I'll say, oh, I had that guy 3 years ago at Kansas City Chiefs. You know, he's a turd. Like you don't want to do
right,
you don't want
right.
to deal with him. Like no matter what his price is. And
what about players? How often do you talk to players about that?
I'll definitely talk to players.
I always felt like management never came to me enough about guys that I either knew, played with somebody, or had an insight on. Why is that?
I don't know. I mean, we should more. But I mean, I definitely try and do it. I mean, a lot of times I'll at least find out, you know, I'll check with Josh or somebody. Josh, do you know anybody that knows this guy? Do you know what, you know, oh, you know what, this player knows him, such and such, just, or, you know, Diggs is real big into knowing a lot of guys. So we'll ask around for sure, but sometimes it's just a guy that, you can't find a match of someone who's been with him in college or pro. Right. And so you're putting the recon of hopefully someone has been around this player at some point.
What about Google and social media?
Yeah.
Do you have like teams that just
so,
scour the internet looking for?
Good question. So my man Derrick Boyko and his staff, they actually put together a book for us every year of free agents and the draft class, and they scour all the social media, any articles. It's basically a one-pager on Ryan Kalil, and it's
just all my shitty tweets and posts. And
all the negative things you said about management and things like that.
So what if you get a kid who's like, he's kind of like a worldly guy and he's got a ton of outside football interests? Is that a big red flag for you or no?
I mean, it's a little bit of a flag.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a flag.
That kind of sucks though.
Yeah.
What if you don't think a kid could be dedicated to football but also have other interests? Or you need a kid that lives, sleeps, and eats football?
You prefer them all to do that, but it's not a deal breaker. But I'm going to need some more.
Potentially a tiebreaker.
Well, I'm going to need some more. I'm going to need a dig. I'm going to have someone tell me that, hey, don't worry about it. When it's time, yes, in February, March, and April, he's going to travel to Italy and Spain, and he's going to do this and this. But when he shows up in July, it's all ball, all season, and he's a good enough talent to overcome that, yes. But you're right, he's probably going to lose on some tiebreakers.
What if he's a good player, but he's just overly opinionated about politics and things that might cause media distractions?
Yeah, we try and get rid of those. It's too hard. It's too long of a season, and the locker room. When that locker room is divided, you can have a talented team, but it's not really a good team because you got the bickering and this guy doesn't like this guy. When you start bringing politics into the locker room, you're asking for it. And there's going to be things that happen in society, and if you have different groups of guys that every time something comes up, they want to get out there, and now, you know, your fans are divided. You're losing suite sales or sponsorship deals because your guy is constantly saying things that are causing issues with, you know, those are just nuisances for your club, for your owner, and it's generally not worth it.
You brought up agents. How's that process for you? Is that one of the least enjoyable parts of talking with agents about either current players or potential new players you're going to sign?
It's like life. Like, there's a lot of really good agents that I enjoy, and we bust balls and laugh, and we can have a tough negotiation and go back and laugh about it. You know, like Josh's agent last year, Patrick Collins, you know, we went back and forth. We were good friends before it started. At some points of it, I didn't think we'd ever talk after it was over, but we still laugh about it. And, you know, ultimately, we were trying to get to the right deal for Josh and the Bills. And you know, you have some tough negotiations, but you respect each other. Just like if you're battling with another GM, you know, if we're doing a trade or whatever, I got to protect the Bills. They got to protect their team. Sometimes it's not always perfect, but you respect the process of how you treat each other. But then, like in life, there's some people you just don't, you know, you see that phone number come up of that agent and you're like, this is the last guy in America.
What's the balance of that? More guys you respect than guys you don't?
Yeah, I would say I think there's more agents that I like and respect than don't, but there's still a good number. It's you know,
you don't have to name anybody, but unless you want to, then I'm totally fine with that. But top agents, or is it more sort of like middle of the road?
There's some really good top agents, but there's some top agents that I don't like, and I don't like how they do business. You know, I'm gonna put my cards on the table. You know, let's shoot each other straight.
Right.
We may not see eye to eye, but that's just my personality. Don't play games, and I don't feel like I'm going to try and play games. I don't want you to play games with me. If you tell me one thing, but then you're doing another behind my back or, you know, whatever to another club to get this player there, then I don't enjoy dealing with you. I want to know that when we're talking, even though I don't like what you're saying, and maybe I don't even like the tone you're giving it to me in, I know it's genuine. I know it's real. I'll still respect, even if, you know, we don't get a deal done.
Are there any entry-level agents that you talk to that you feel like are way out of their league, overly inexperienced, and maybe even worse, you are concerned for the player that they're representing, that they're not representing them the right way?
Yes. Agents a lot of times worry about being recruited against, and I respect their field and understand it's hard, but sometimes they don't want to do a deal that is really good for the player, but they're nervous that this other agent who's a competitor of theirs, who's taken some clients of theirs or vice versa, is about to do a player right on top of them, and they're scared to do the deal because that guy's going to recruit against them. And I like this player. Like, I want this, what's best for this young man and his family. Yes, I need a good deal for the Bills, but it doesn't do me any good to do a really bad deal for the player. You know what I mean? He's going to be pissed off really quick. It's about finding the right deal for that player's agent. And I do know, Ryan, there's times when an agent will advise a player not to take a deal, and I think it's wrong. I think that's a really good deal for that player. This player's never made any kind of money, and they're willing to sacrifice that because they don't want to get recruited against for another, you know, from another agent.
When my contract was up in Carolina and we were re-signing, I remember there was this weird transitional period where, you know, I had such a great relationship with all you guys upstairs, and when those negotiations started talking, it was almost like we were like separated for a bit, just to let the negotiations happen and let the business side of it play out. But then I'm relying on my agent to tell me all the communication. So it's funny because it's like I'm hearing exactly what's being said about me without me feeling like I'm in the room, but I kind of am.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm curious. I'm curious what that's like for you, knowing that you're talking to an agent that's probably going to tell them everything that you're saying to the agent, to the player.
Yeah.
How much of that are you calculated in how you're careful with what you say? And then the second part of that is, have you had a situation where the information you're giving is not getting back to the player correctly.
Yeah, I mean,
or honestly,
there's definitely times when I suspect that it's not. I can't say I 100% know, but there are times when I'm uneasy about what's going back to the player, and especially if we're not even on the same planet of where they see the value is, and you don't want to. I try to minimize, and my contract negotiators as well, try and minimize saying negative things. You're just trying to say, well, I know you're saying you see the player with these guys, but we just don't see him there, and here's why. And sometimes those are taken negatively on the call, and you're like, man, I hope they don't take that and call this player and make it like because next thing you know, this player doesn't even want to be here anymore. They're frustrated with how you view them, and in reality, it could be a little bit distorted because it's the telephone game. I do always worry about that. I try to be calculated in what we do say, especially if it is something that's negative. But that's a hard part of this business of knowing what you're saying and how it's ultimately going to be told to the player.
All right, especially if you have an agent. Agent Joe calls you and he goes, well, my linebacker is a top 5 linebacker. And you're like, no, he's not. How do you go about saying that without it getting back to your player that you don't think he's a top 5?
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately, if we're going to extend a player, we've had a player that we drafted here, we signed them, and we're going to extend them. I try and have a conversation and tell them, listen, do you want to be here? If so, you've done a great job. We want to extend you. We're going to put together an offer. I'm not talking numbers. And I always try and tell them, if you have any questions or concerns through the process, please come ask me. So while I'm not going to ask you every time the agent talks to you how it went, if there's anything you heard that you thought was out of line from the Bills, whether it's from me or my negotiator, I want to hear it. And I can either say, yes, that is how it's said, or no, let me clear this up for you. This is what we mean. So I try and have that kind of dialogue with the players. And then, ultimately when we agree on a deal, I ask every single one of them, are you happy with this deal? Are you thrilled? Like, if you're not happy and thrilled now, don't sign this, because that should be your happiest moment, right? You're not going to be happy next year as you see other guys sign over you. So make sure you're happy.
Yeah, it's funny, the money part of it, it's always tough because, it's all amazing money.
Yeah.
Like all the contracts now
Yep.
are great. And it's tough because you, as a player, when you're trying to put a value on yourself, the only thing you have to go off of is your peers. I've always found, at least for me personally, it was less about the money and it was more about the respect from the
Yep.
club and where I slated on the totem pole of contracts. So
Yep.
I wonder how much of that do you think about when you guys are looking at comps and trying to do right by the player, but also protect the Bills?
I get that. It's definitely, you hear that sometimes because, we've said before, like, all right, you're making $20 million or you're making $17.5. Like, is that really going to change your life? But it does sometimes come down to, well, who's making 18 and who's making 19 versus the difference in Ryan Kalil's life for making 20 or making 17.5. Do you want to be rich or you want to be filthy rich? It's just,
Yeah, right.
The numbers are crazy.
They really are. And then it comes down to the guarantee stuff, I think, a lot of times.
Yep.
I've seen players who have had bad agents who have talked them into a big number contract, but the guarantee money's not great.
Well, again, sometimes it goes back to that agent is looking to sell something to recruit more players. And yeah, I got the highest salary for this, but in reality, a lot of people don't add it up that player's never going to reach year 4 and 5 of that deal.
Yeah, you could give a guy a $100 million contract and only guarantee him $1 million.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's really only $1 million contract.
That's $1 million. And that's that's part of the deal that gets lost in the mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been picked up more in recent years, but the ticker doesn't go through all that. The ticker
right.
says 5 years, $140 million, it doesn't really go through. Well, there's guarantees, and then there's the hard guarantee.
Yeah.
You know, you got injury guarantees to protect them, but it's not a real guarantee until it's a hard guarantee.
And now you got playbook guarantees. now you guys, I always said this was going to happen with these damn iPads. The moment we put these playbooks and video on the iPads, I was like, it's only a matter of time before you guys start micromanaging,
tracking, usage and all that stuff.
How much of that stuff do you guys look at?
We don't. Honestly, we really don't.
Yeah.
We don't. Listen, if a guy's going to do it, he's going to do it. And I don't know a lot about that situation, but we're not sitting here tracking it. The only thing we track is when the guy's showing up 3 straight days in meetings and he doesn't have an iPad. Like, hey, where's your iPad? You know what I mean? Where's your iPad? All right, well, you're going to get payroll deducted and we're getting you another one. And you know what I mean? That's really the only tracking we do.
Last topic I want to talk to you about, and we'll close up, and I appreciate you walking through all this stuff with me. The Bills have an amazing franchise quarterback in Josh Allen. The thing that gets talked about a lot whenever you get a guy like that is how are you going to protect them? So I'm curious your philosophies on offensive line, the importance of that to you, and just like the state of offensive line play in general.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you asked me. You know, you're going to think I'm making this up, but I'm not. Like, you taught me the value of center, and I saw not only, you know, the quarterback is obviously the captain of the offense and a leader, but that center, if you've got the right guy there, he's the point person. He's the point guard of that group of that. You know, you got a point guard in basketball of the 5 guys. That's the point person there. And we kind of band-aided it for Josh's rookie year, but I knew after that year the #1 priority and the guy we paid the most was Mitch Morse the next year. I was like, we've got to get a center to lead that group and to protect our quarterback. And so we've had Mitch here ever since then, and we just extended him this offseason. He's been great for Josh, great for our group. But the other part of your question was O-line play. You know, we kind of start with, we want to be strong up front, both sides, offense and defensive line. That's literally where we start every year, is the line, because if you don't have good line play, my experience says things aren't going to go well.
You can listen to Block Forever and other sports content on Audible. Audible is the home of storytelling, audiobooks, originals, podcasts, and more. Start listening free at audible.com. My next guest is the glue that holds together the Titans offensive line. Played 4 years in Houston. He's now in his 7th season in Tennessee, where he's quietly positioned himself as one of the best centers in the game today. Please enjoy my conversation with a guy you may not know, but definitely should, Ben Jones. All right, Ben Jones. Appreciate you jumping on, man.
Happy to do it, bud.
I want to make a show, Block Forever, that gave fans the ability to hear from guys that they don't get to hear a lot from. I've followed you and your career. I've always loved watching you play. And I don't surprisingly know a lot about you. We haven't really crossed paths. So I was pretty excited when I got the chance to be able to talk with you and get to know you and share that with the fans. Offensive linemen, I would argue, have the best pulse of the team. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, being the center, you make the calls. I try to build a relationship with every guy on the team. But when I'm at work, it's all ball once I'm on the field. But in the locker room, in the meetings, you got to have fun. And I started something a while back with I did it actually to my roommate in college. I hit him with a birthday cake on his birthday. So my only rule is I can only get you on your birthday, not the day before, not the day after. And if you catch me in the act, I'm done. So I have to plan it out and do all that. Like Vrabel, he talks smack every year about it, and I'm undefeated against him. He can't stop it. I've hit him with everything from cottage cheese to baby powder to his own birthday cake. I've hit him as soon as he walked in the building, sitting in his office, right before a team meeting. After practice this year, he was trying to talk to the fans. I hit him in front of the fans, looking at cameras when he's coming in. So if you're going to talk smack, I like to back it up and I like to see my plan come to life.
Do guys like Vrabel Do they get a kick out of it after the fact, or do they ever get pissed?
He's chased me around. He's tried to whoop me, but now he says just get used to it. He tells the guys when they're on the team, don't let Ben know your birthday. So I at least get everybody once. You got to have fun at playing this sport. When you're banging your head against people every day, you got to have some fun in that meeting room.
You're in year 11 now. How do you balance putting in extra time to mentor young guys with all the responsibilities you have outside the game?
Yeah, that's the hard part because I do have a family. I have 3 kids at home that they deserve my time too. So when I come home, it's strictly I'm a dad. I'm a full-time husband when I come home. But when I step in that building, I'm giving the Titans everything I got. It's from 5 a.m. to wherever time Vrabel lets us out that day, and the guys know that. And it could be a Saturday morning. We don't have to be there at 9. And I'm there at 5 breaking down tape. Like, all right, what is the things that we talked about on Wednesday and that I glossed over that's going to show up in this game? Going back over the run game again, going over all the fronts where I've seen the same fronts now a million times, but I'm like, oh, this is that one coaching point that might show up once in the game. And that goes a long way because those guys trust me day to day. I can make any call in the game, and either one of my guards will do exactly what I say.
Do you ever get annoyed when you put it out there that you're willing to help, but some guys, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, they just don't want to hear it?
Yeah, I know I get frustrated. They call me the old grandpa now because I care so much about details and seeing, like, it just bothers me. Like, hey, we covered that. Like, why are we having to tell you this again and again? And this is our profession. I don't think a lot of it clicks. Like, hey, this is your job. This is your livelihood. I'm trying to support my family. I'm trying to protect my family for life. Like, this means something to me. I can only play so many years in this league, and I'm trying to win a championship.
Right.
And every day is, hey, a day we can get better. If not, my time is ticking.
What is it about centers that become incredibly grumpy after year 10?
I don't know. The grandpa factor kicks in. They know not to text me after 8 o'clock at night because I'm going to bed because they know I'm getting up at the crack of dawn. But yeah, I definitely, your body takes a beating over those years.
It's the same, man. It's like the center position physically is demanding. You have all these sort of like extra responsibilities that the other linemen don't. And then there's like the politics of it that somehow the center is always responsible for. It's kind of like, it's a whirlwind. It's a lot. And for whatever reason, every older guy I've ever looked up to or talked to, after they hit year 10, they all become known as these kind of grumpy old men.
No doubt.
Did you play center your whole life, or did you move around at all?
My first 3 years, I started at guard.
How was that transition?
It was definitely different. All the camp, I played center, and week 1, I got the tap on the shoulder and was like, hey, you're rotating in guard this week. I was like, I haven't even taken a snap. So I ended up, after the first 6 games, I rotated every week. Then I got the starting job after week 6.
I played guard my rookie year, and it was a disaster. It was actually against Houston, and I had to play against Amobi Okoye, and I absolutely just fell apart by the third quarter. I think I gave up like 4 sacks that game, and I was like, never again. I'm never telling the coach I could play guard ever again.
Oh.
You know, it's one of those situations where you're like, you want to be a team guy, and we had a situation where guards went out, and it was like, hey, can anybody play? And I was like, I can. You know, it was like you try to be Captain All-America, and that was a disaster. Although there's learning lessons in that. You know, I sort of had my first taste of what it takes to kind of have, you know, I kind of had my first taste of the amount of resiliency that you need to play offensive line in the league. Do you remember what your first moment of that was in the NFL?
Yeah, my first start was against Elodie Nada. And I felt like, and you're like, oh, this guy is bigger, stronger, everything than me.
No. He's not bigger, stronger. He's like the definition of big and strong. I mean, I've never seen a more massive human being than Haloti Nada. I mean, can you explain? I don't think a lot of people realize how intimidating a man of that stature is.
Yeah, nicest guy in the world, too.
The nicest.
The nicest. Whooping your tail and helping you up like, it's okay, son. I'm like, oh, gosh.
Isn't that almost worse, though, than a guy who's an asshole? Like a nice guy who's just absolutely throwing you around?
No doubt. I went from blocking him. They're telling you all week, oh, he's going to be on this side of the ball. Then after about 3 weeks in a row, I went from him to Kyle Williams to Sue. I'm like, no, coach. they're coming to me. No matter where the scheme is, they're coming to me. I'm the duck as the guard.
The only good thing about Halote is every now and then he kind of went to sleep. He didn't always play his A game.
Right.
I think just being that massive drains you of so much energy. So he would sort of like preserve his energy. But I'll never forget one time we were playing against Halote, and Steve Smith, who was known to just absolutely verbally try to assault the other team, started going after him. Everybody on the line was like, yo,
chill.
What are you doing?
No doubt.
What are you doing, guy? You don't have to block him. Why are you waking up the beast? And he did. He woke that guy up, and he just absolutely tried to terrorize us for the next 3 series. Have you ever had another teammate just absolutely, ramp up a guy that you had to play?
Oh, absolutely. I remember DeMarco Murray getting into it with Sue. I'm like, whoa. He is lining up at a 0 nose on third down. Leave him alone.
Yeah.
Like, I kill him with kindness. I'll finish you over a pile. I'll do all that. But I'm gonna, hey, my bad. You must have tripped. Like, hey, keep going, bud. How's your wife? How's your kids? Whistle to whistle. I'm going to try to finish you. But after that, I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like that's a big part of the mental warfare of the game, too, that I don't think a lot of people realize. It's like there's some guys you try to push and really get in their head and get them off their game and thinking about you. And then there's other guys you try to almost kill them with kindness and lull them to sleep.
Yep.
If there was a team that was struggling, I would sort of like come as like, somebody who was there to bend an ear. Like I feel bad for you guys. You guys are playing your asses off and just game after game, they keep letting you down. It's tough. And you sort of try to get them to kind of quit without them knowing they're quitting. Like, yeah, why do I need to keep playing hard for this team? Doesn't care about me. You ever play any of those games with guys?
Absolutely. You got to know who you can say stuff to in this league. Those guys are good over there. And I'm not trying to get anybody riled up that I have to deal with. I know if it's a young guy and he's in his head, I might give him a little something else to think about. But if it's an old guy that is a sleeping giant, you keep him calm all game.
Who's the hardest matchup you've ever had?
My rookie year at guard, Sue trying to get a new contract on Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah. The guys on their contract year, I always forget.
gosh.
They like become superheroes, don't they?
Oh, it's not fair. He went for, I think I had 17 pressures, no sacks. He was bouncing me off a Schaub. I was like, I cannot hold up any longer. You got to get rid of this ball. But he ended up kicking Schaub that game. Like he was in that spell, that Sue, the kicking and stomping Sue. Not the Sue he is now. He's kind of mellowed out a little bit, but he was on it that year.
I know you started out in the league playing with Chris Myers in Houston. What other centers did you study when you were getting started in the league?
Yeah, so starting out it was Chris, then it was you, Alex, Mack, like guys who were similar size who'd done it at a high level. Those y'all literally the 2 guys, like anytime y'all played similar opponents or anything like that, like, oh, I'm gonna grab this guy's tape, see what he's doing now. Like Pouncey, I did not watch his tape. He is too athletic for me. Like I'm like, this guy is a specimen. Him and Kelsey, I'm like, oh, Kelsey can run in circles around me.
It's so funny, Ben. I feel the same way. It's there was guys that I would watch and there was other guys that I couldn't, vice versa too. It's like, I'd watch guys like you, guys that I knew had a similar playing style. And then guys that I admired but couldn't watch film on and had to study were guys like Nick Mangold, who was just so big and strong and powerful. Like I was never, ever going to mimic that. So I'd always get frustrated because we'd have these like third down tapes of some of these teams that I couldn't watch, because I was like, well, I'm not going to block them that way. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
I don't think people realize how important it is to try to find somebody that's sort of your caliber skill set so that you can have a better understanding of how the game plan is.
Right. Yeah. You got to, that's what I pull similar schemes. If it's this is a jet team, this is a Mike Point team. Hey, where are they getting their help from? So you kind of know, like, all right, if this guy blocked him, I should be able to block him this week. So you kind of pick that guy and like, oh, this guy really, he works on this guy because he's a leaner or this guy's long. So you're like, that's not me. I'm going to watch this guy. So you kind of get your cues from guys like that. And it comes down to it. You just got to hold up just long enough.
Common questions guys like us get asked, and I know you do, and I especially do now that I'm done playing, which is, what was it like blocking for this guy? Or what was it like blocking for that guy? I'm sure you get asked that a lot about Derrick Henry. I never have a good answer for, what it's like blocking for him, because it's like, one part of me thinks, well,
I block for whoever's back there. This is my job. Here's my responsibility. But there are certain guys that I think get in the game and sort of bring a different kind of energy to the huddle or a certain kind of confidence. Can you talk about Derrick and sort of what he's like as a teammate and what he's like blocking for?
Yeah, he's special. His size, his speed. If your guy's not making the tackle, it's a chance to go to the house. He's got the 99 yarders. He can take it to the house at any point. You want to get him started because if you get him on the edge to those corners and DBs, nobody really wants to tackle a guy like that. And another thing, you don't want to be in the hole when he's running because all my bumps and bruises I feel like come from him. It's like he'll run you over before he gets to the backer. So I'm trying to get out the way so he can get going.
I had a back like that in Jonathan Stewart. I think I went on IR twice because of that exact thing you just mentioned. Just guys who are fighting and grinding for every little inch, and sort of there's collateral damage sometimes if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
No doubt.
I blocked for Cam Newton all those years, and it always amazed me still this day when I think about some of the teams we played and how scared some of our opponents were in facing him. I mean, I watched corners and DBs and linebackers sort of cower when he would come downhill and hit them. I mean, he was such a big, imposing guy. Do you see any of that stuff when Derrick's running around? Have you ever seen or heard from opponents throughout the game and having to bring him down?
It's the December factor. It gets a little colder. Teams are kind of out of the playoff hunt. And somehow these DBs take just awful angles because they don't want to get the stiff arm or have to tackle that big joker. As we always say, it's December. It's time to break some runs now. Guys somehow start getting a little slow and a little taking bad angles out of nowhere.
You're absolutely right. You talk about late in the season, December. When you have a good running team, it's tough to not want to, especially as an offensive lineman, keep calling for it because, guys are wearing down. It's getting late in the season. It's getting harder and harder to defend the run. And when you have a good running game, do you find yourself sort of campaigning for that?
No doubt. You can tell the momentum's in games. And when Derrick is feeling it, you want the ball in his hands. And you can see us on the field like, hey, just keep it rolling. This is what we're doing. I feel like our coaches do have a good mindset. Vrabel preaches on it. Hey, we're going to be a physical team that runs the ball and wins the fourth quarter of seasons. So it's in us, and it's our mindset as a team of the style of play that we like to play.
I played for a head coach who was a former great player in the NFL. How much of Vrabel being a former Patriot gives him instant credibility coming in that locker room?
Definitely. I was with him in Houston when he was just a linebackers coach, and just see his mindset, like every day he ran out on the field, and just seeing the accountability he holds us, his coaches, and everybody to. He's the first one to say, like, hey, that was my fault. And he's hands-on with anything. Like, if you're coming back from an injury to anything, he's the guy that's like, hey, what can you do at practice? Not what you can't do. What can you do? And we'll work around that. So he understands, like, hey, you're going to be banged up during the season, but whatever you can do, let's get that out of it today instead of thinking about what we can't do.
I think everybody's always fascinated with the winning culture the Patriots have been able to consistently bring for a couple decades now. I know you never played there, but what do you know of some of the Patriots culture did Vrabel sort of take to heart and bring to the Titans?
Yeah, so we had O'Brien in Houston that was straight from there, then Vrabel here. It's just the amount of detail that comes to life, what it takes to win, and you have keys to the game. And if we hit these keys, these are the keys that's going to help us win. Like, it's playing smart football. It's not doing dumb stuff to get you beat. If it's penalties, turnovers, it's the little things that the rules. Like, he literally takes the time every Friday and shows clips from all around the league. Like, hey, this is pass interference. This is what they're calling. Like, hey, this is a hurry-up situation. Like, this is how we're going to handle this. So the whole team sees it. So I know what's going on when the defense is going through their scenarios. He does a great job that the whole organization who's sitting in that meeting, he's explaining situations so it doesn't show up on our game on Sunday.
So relationships important to him, obviously, with his leaders on the team. Is that a tough thing to balance, having a really close relationship with your coach, but then also the business transactional part of it?
Yeah, I can call Vrabel at any point of the day. If anything happens, he's a guy I can call at midnight. If anything's going on with my kids, he's the first one to say, hey, go take care of your family. He's a guy, because he's been there. He's had to go home where his wife's having a baby, or, hey, something's going on, death in the family. He understands the stress that puts on a player, the stress that mentally you're not there. And he wants that to be handled first before you step in that building. So having that aspect of him knowing what it means to be a player in this league, to play at a high level, and you earn his respect. So you get a little longer leash the more you do it and how you treat the team. If you're a guy who's going to be there every day and lay on the line, your leash is a lot longer.
All right, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed listening to these conversations as much as I enjoyed having them. Always great catching up with Brandon Beane and fun getting to know Ben a little bit. Next week, I'm going to be speaking with one of the best to ever do it, former Jets center, Nick Mangold. I'm also going to be talking with Juju Smith-Schuster of the Chiefs, so make sure to check that episode out. And don't forget, Thursday Night Football, Ravens, Bucks on Amazon Prime Video. It's going to be a good one. I think that about covers it. That's it for me. Check out new episodes of Block Forever each and every Wednesday. Talk to you next week. This has been an Audible original production of Block Forever, produced by Fresh Produce and Audiorama. Matt Waxman is our lead producer. Sound design and edit by Kenny Holmes. Our producers are Kenny Holmes and Matt Schrader. Production assistant Ben Gerstel. And our talent booker is Kristen Dunn. For Audible, executive producer Pat Shaw. For Audiorama, the executive producer, well, that's me, Ryan Kalil. For Fresh Produce Media, executive producers Colin Moore, Joe Killian, and Jason Ross. Head of production, Elena Bovitz. Our supervising producer is Jamila Zara Williams. Production coordinator, Henry Koch. And our production manager is Herminio Ochoa. Special thanks to Powerhouse Capital and Mikey Fowler. And I'm your host, Ryan Kalil. Copyright 2022 by Audiorama Inc. Sound recording copyright 2022 by Audible Originals LLC.